This is your boy Caleb over here making his first YouTube video ever. So congratulations for stopping by this channel. I am absolutely a diehard fantasy football fan. Don't need to give a huge background on me. I've been playing fantasy football since the time when LaDainian Tomlinson was the 101 in redraft. If you remember that, congratulations, you found the right channel for you. Absolutely love fantasy football and Dynasty fantasy football in particular, and absolutely love just hearing and connecting with a bunch of people like Ron Stewart, Mason Dodd, and just those are the type of people that I look up to when I'm making this content. BDGE, you enjoy watching those channels, you enjoy following those channels, you just enjoy watching fantasy football content because at the end of the day, you're sitting there and this is what you do. Then this is the channel for you. Today, our video, we are going to be talking about my top 5 Dynasty running backs at the moment. Now, if you've been playing Dynasty fantasy football for any period of time, you know that running back is the most volatile position there is. Meaning, these guys get injured all the time. Our rankings are changing. It just feels like yesterday Todd Gurley was the running back 1, and that's when I think of a lot of dynasty leagues I started back in 2019, he was a first round pick. Le'Veon Bell was a first round pick back in 2018. This position it goes by so fast, and so I'm gonna give you my rankings. We're actually gonna have a part 2 video, so you know what? Congratulations, you made it to part 1. Please drop a like, drop a follow. This is also right here is my Twitter following as well. So feel free to go give me a follow on Twitter. I'm going to be posting a lot more content, posting a lot more thoughts as we continue to grind into redraft season. My number 1 Dynasty running back is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Now, I know, a lot of people are going to say Jonathan Taylor is the 101. That's going to be the consensus for redraft, but also for Dynasty. A few reasons why for Dynasty he's going to be the running back 1. Number 1, he just put up this amazing season where he was a bell cow, was the RB1 on a points per game basis. Everyone, when he came in to being a prospect, was the not a perfect prospect, but very close to a Saquon or Ezekiel Elliott, where he was running the 4.4 40, weighed 220. I'm 5'10". He's just the perfect bell cow running back, and of course landed with the Colts, which had the amazing offensive line. As we continue to look and project him forward this year, especially with them adding Matt Ryan, you have Michael Pittman starting to emerge, because you got to think about this. For last year, they really didn't have a solid receiving core. Carson Wentz was throwing the ball all over the place, and Jonathan Taylor was really the only offense that they had to hold them down. So I'm thinking that this year it's going to be close to the same. It's hard. I think if you look, I forget exactly who posted this on Twitter, so I'm going to find this and post it right here. But the running back 1 has been really hard on a year-to-year basis to become the RB1 again. I think Jonathan Taylor has a really good shot at doing that just because of some of the different situations, but it's very unlikely that happens again. But this is Dynasty. I think Jonathan Taylor still has 2 to 3 years of just amazing production left before that age 26 cliff starts to happen. If you have him in Dynasty, congratulations. If you're rebuilding, congratulations. Hold on to him. If you're contending, congratulations. Hold on to him. He's the perfect Dynasty running back to have. So that is why he's in my S tier and he's in my RB1. My second Dynasty running back, so I had Jonathan Taylor in my S tier. In my A tier, Javonte Williams is my RB2. Also taking the first spot in the A tier. Now, the big thing with Javonte Williams that a lot of people are going to say is that, oh, Caleb, he's overhyped. Oh, Caleb, don't you know that Melvin Gordon re-signed? I know all that. The thing with Javonte Williams is this year, if we saw the hype that he had this offseason, quietly reminded me of the Cam Akers hype of last offseason. Now, granted, Cam Akers got injured last offseason. Javonte Williams, I hope you don't get injured. I have you on a lot of my fantasy football teams. I just don't know exactly what we're going to be thinking of Javonte going into this year, but I'll tell you this. With the Russell Wilson signing, that helps him out tremendously. The amount of goal line carries that he had last year was not the amount that he's going to have this year. If we look, I actually have Player Profiler pulled up right here. Last year he played 17 games. He only had 203 rushing attempts, 903 rushing yards. He had 43 receptions, which catches a lot of people by surprise, and had 7 total touchdowns with a 12.1 points per game, putting him at an RB22 on a points per game basis. Now, Caleb, people are probably saying, Caleb, there's a lot of room for growth. I completely agree. Javonte Williams, I think this is what people aren't going to consider. With Russell Wilson increasing the efficiency, you have the wide receivers on the outside, solid receivers with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. They're going to be in a lot more scoring and better game scripts than typically would happen if you had Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater as your quarterback. And so that's why I really think that Javonte Williams is this year, he's going to be a top 10 running back this year. I mean, you're going to have to draft him like that in redraft, but also in Dynasty, he is going to be a top 2 option for you going forward. And he's a really safe pick. If you got to pay up for a running back, I'd be paying up to get Javonte if you're rebuilding. Now, if you're contending, I don't know if this is going to be the year. I think 2023 is the year for Javonte for sure. But you also have to consider that he's 21, about to turn 22 years old. So the next 2 years, by the time he's coming up to that 5th year of his contract, he's still only going to be 24, which is going to be really great if he can get that second contract. And it's just really going to increase his Dynasty fantasy football value. And that is why I have him as my RB2. At RB3, I have Breece Hall. Now, Breece Hall. What? Why is Breece Hall my RB3? Caleb, isn't he a rookie? Caleb, isn't he a little bit overhyped? To all those questions, I would actually say yes, to be completely honest. But the thing, when I was evaluating these rookies coming into this year, I did not have Breece Hall in this range at all. I had Breece Hall as maybe a top 12 Dynasty fantasy running back. But then all of a sudden the NFL Combine happened in Indianapolis. I'm actually in northern Indiana. That's where I'm actually from. So we pay a little, there's nothing happening in March besides, I guess, March Madness. But, in the cornfields of Indiana. So we pay a little bit more attention to the Combine than most folks. And he absolutely blew the Combine away. If we look, he had a 4.39 40 with a speed score of 116. He also has a burst score of 131, which puts him really up in that Jonathan Taylor athleticism numbers, which is super exciting. You heard rumors of going to the Bills and what landing spots, and then of course he goes to the Jets, which for a lot of people they might say maybe that's not the best landing spot. But I think when you really have to think about what are the Jets doing, Zach Wilson is not throwing the ball a whole lot. They're trying to, but clearly he might not be the quarterback of the future. They just drafted Garrett Wilson in the first round, so of course they're trying to improve that wide receivers and they're trying to improve the passing game, but they're going to have to lean on Breece Hall. I mean, what other running backs? He instantly becomes the best running back in that running back room, and as they continue to add to that offensive line, as they continue to develop that offense, Breece Hall is just ready to explode. I easily could see him getting 250 carries this year and being a top 8 running back. And if he becomes, like I said, a top, even if he's an RB1 this year for you in fantasy, what is that going to do for his dynasty value going into next year? It's going to just skyrocket it. Especially with these running backs, I think rookie running backs in particular, they usually get off to a little bit of a slow start. If you drafted Breece Hall in your dynasty league, don't be trading him away for on the cheap. Hold on to him, because just like Jonathan Taylor, where it took him about 8 weeks to finally get his feet under him and start producing those fantasy points, I think the same thing's true with Breece Hall. At number 4, I have Najee Harris, also in my A tier. Caleb, people may be asking me, Caleb, why is Najee Harris so low? Why is Breece Hall ahead of Najee Harris? Are you crazy, Caleb? I might be a little crazy. I'm going to be honest. I don't always go with the consensus rankings when I'm thinking of how these values play out, just because I've been playing Dynasty Fantasy Football for a while now to be able to see how players get overreacted and impacted. I think when I'm looking at Najee Harris, the big thing that stands out to me is, of course, he had a great year with Big Ben. And I just don't know if this year with either Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky, if he's going to get the same amount of target share, because he was getting insane amount of volume. He was at 17 points per game, which put him at RB6. He had 1,200 rushing yards with 307 attempts. So let's also remind, when we were going back, Javonte Williams only had 200 attempts, and Najee Harris had 307 attempts. He had 74 receptions and also had 10 total touchdowns. Those touchdowns, they can vary. With the offense struggling a little bit more due to quarterback play, they're going to be scoring a little less touchdowns. I would imagine that's more around the 7 to 8 touchdown mark. I don't know if he's going to be getting all those receptions, because also Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky like to either sling the ball downfield or they can take off and run themselves, whereas Big Ben was a little bit immobile. He had to kind of get the ball out quickly because their offensive line was also terrible and his arm was terrible. So I just feel like Najee Harris, that's why I have him at number 4, plus the fact that he's 24 years old. A lot of people aren't considering that Najee Harris and like Saquon Barkley are like 8 months apart in age, but yet Saquon Barkley has like 2 or 3 years of NFL experience on Najee Harris. That's why I have Najee at 4. I don't think he's less talented running back. I don't think he's talented as Breece Hall. He's a little bit more proven than Breece Hall, but at the end of the day, in 2 years, Najee's going to be 26 years old, whereas Javonte and Breece Hall in 2 years are going to be like 23 and 24. And those are the running backs that are still going to be holding that like premium upside value, whereas Najee Harris is going to be on the downswing. So if you're a little bit more in the contending sphere and you want to get younger, Najee Harris, cool, pay up for him. But also understand that if you're paying up for him compared to a Javonte or a Breece Hall to acquire on your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams, you might not be getting him for as long as a stretch. At number 5, and this is our final player in the A tier, is going to be DeAndre Swift. So DeAndre Swift was one of my favorite running backs coming out in the class. I actually had him ahead of Jonathan Taylor in rookie rankings. What a mistake that was for me. The thing with DeAndre Swift is he just reminds me exactly of Alvin Kamara. When you looked at the game of when he came out of Georgia, was just a pass-catching running back that was super strong. I don't remember if anyone remembers him when he's getting drafted and his dad looked like a freaking lineman in the NFL, but just had the build and had the reception and the smooth route running, and he played in a Georgia offense that was very much like an NFL offense, and there was a lot of hype, and he was an early day 2 pick for the Lions. But then, of course, gets to Detroit. Matthew Stafford was kind of in and out injured that year. They really struggled. Of course, Matthew Stafford then gets traded to the Rams. The Lions offense, they decide to rebuild. They draft Penei Sewell to kind of help the offensive line, but the offensive line is still trash. The offense is trash. And Swift, has had his injury woes. He's really only good for about 11 to 13 games a season. But I think the thing that you have to consider is that's pretty much what you're getting from any running back, just with the injury odds that potentially happen on a year-to-year basis. But when he gives you those games, I mean, he's giving you the 22 to 25 points a game just because of that reception floor that he has. If we look on how he kind of did last year, he averaged 16 points a game, which was RB8. He had 62 receptions and 7 total touchdowns, but had almost 500 receiving yards, and then had 151 rushing attempts for 617 yards. 151 rushing attempts. Imagine if that even got up to 200, 220, and those receptions got up to like 75, 80. I mean, we're looking at a running back that just continues to impress, continues to improve. And I think Alvin Kamara, that's his ceiling, but like his floor is what he's been doing, which is absolutely being a top 8 RB. But I do think he has that RB1 upside if he can stay healthy. And if the Lions, like they said, they're continuing to improve, Dan Campbell's doing a really good job. And hopefully next year they bring in an actual quarterback to really help take this offense to new heights. So that is my top 5 Dynasty running backs. Please check back tomorrow. I'm actually going to be dropping another video talking a little bit more about 10, so the next top 5 as well. We're going to be dropping a lot more content, so feel free to subscribe as we continue to grind and just become better fantasy football players day in and day out. Thanks so much.